Mr. Newstreet will present Congressman Stearns' statement first, and then we will hear from Mr. Jett. With that, I turn the meeting over to Mike Trudell.
That's what I thought.
You're not taking questions, so we just bring.
We're not making the allegations.
Let Mr. Jett.
All right.
I don't mind going first because these aren't allegations, folks. These are facts. I'm going to hand out a sworn statement that I gave to the FBI. It's a sworn affidavit. You'll see my signature on it. I challenge Cliff Stearns to do the same thing. But first, let me just talk about James Jett. I was a police officer. I graduated from the FBI Academy, graduated from Jacksonville Police Academy, served as a law enforcement officer in Orange Park for several years, ran for county commissioner, was elected 3 terms to represent the Middleburg-Clay Hill District. I've served for 14 years as your clerk of circuit courts here. During that time, my integrity, my character was challenged. In 1989, there was a group of people that wanted to locate a hazardous materials disposal facility just south of Middleburg, here, right over the Floridian Aquifer. We turned them down from a zoning standpoint. They approached me, had a guy approach me, offered me $30,000 to reinstitute that zoning to try to get that approved. I did then what I've just done with this issue. I immediately contacted the state attorney. The state attorney's office asked me to wear a body bug, asked me to audio tape my phone. As a matter of fact, Sheriff Beasler was the investigator for the state attorney's office back then. Subject was subsequently arrested, tried, and convicted of attempted bribery. So I run on the issue that in Congress, we need people of character. We need people who are willing to stand up, because this is the most difficult time, I believe, in American history. Newt Gingrich said this is the most important election in his generation. Rush Limbaugh said this is the most important election in the history of America. And a lot of it has to do with what was read just a few minutes ago. Because we have a government in Washington that has no regard for the U.S. Constitution. And I am a strict constitutionalist. I do not believe it's a living document. I believe it's a literal document. And when you have a president or a Congress that disobeys the Constitution, then they should be held accountable for that. Tonight, I appreciate the opportunity to come. Hopefully this will be the last time I talk about this incident. I was hoping that I could get to talk about it in front and with Cliff Stearns, but obviously he's sending his people. When you see this document, a sworn affidavit by me to the FBI, you will see 5 names on there. 2 of them I've never talked to about this. One is the head of the Republican Party, Lenny Curry. Never talked to him, wouldn't know him if I seen him today. He mentioned in the press that he wouldn't know Jimmy Jett if he had a one-man lineup, so that's absolutely true. His name was thrown out. Jennifer Carroll, never talked to her. Wonderful lady, lives in Clay County, represents Clay County well. She's a lieutenant governor. But the FBI asked that I place everything on this document, direct or indirect, regarding any contact concerning this incident. Here's how it began, and I explained this last night, and hopefully if I'm asked to explain it in the future, I will, because I've had several interviews with national press, local press, and everything else. And I'm going to issue a couple of challenges to Mr. Stearns' office when I finish this. I decided to run for this office in December and January of last year, when of 2011, January of 2012. What happened was the state Senate produced their maps for the Congressional District, October, November, somewhere in that time frame. The Congressional District, District 3 now is this number, is very conducive to someone from Clay County winning that. Clay County has about 41% of the Republican vote for the entire district. Clay County and Alachua County together has almost 70% of the vote. So it is a seat that was very conducive for our county. I was approached by a friend of mine, Jim Horn. We had a discussion. Jim Horn is not only a friend of mine, or was a friend of mine, he was also volunteered to be my campaign finance treasurer, and he is my paid lobbyist for the Clay County Clerk's office, and he will be until the end of this month. So I have a relationship with Jim Horn in 3 directions: working in my campaign, as a friend, and as a paid employee of mine. This was the latter part of December when he approached about running for this office and representing Clay County. Another guy that you'll see in here is the name Judd Sapp, Judd Sapp. Another friend of mine. He supported me in the past. He's given me money and donations. He was on board to helping me in my campaign as it originally started. Jim Horn in a couple of meetings said Cliff Stearns had mentioned to him that, this was a couple of meetings with people there, other people, that he was going to support someone from Clay County and he would support James Jett for the position. Sherry Porter, his congressional aide, on a couple of occasions. The last time I remember was the third Wednesday of January. About 50 people present at the Republican Men's Club on Fleming Island made this statement, and I quote it. Congressman Stearns wants someone from Clay County to represent this congressional district. He does not want someone who will move into Clay County. He wants someone from Clay County. Words similar to that was also said at the monthly meeting of the Republican Executive Committee. Based on those comments and based on the fact of the demographics of this race, I said, okay, I'm withdrawing my candidacy as your clerk, of course, for re-election. I'm going to run for this. A week and a half later, so a couple weeks later, I received a call from Sherry Porter. It says Congressman Stearns wanted me to let you know that he's now considering moving into this district and running for this race. I said, fine, I'm not getting out. I called Congressman Stearns, got him on his cell phone, and I think he was in Washington, but wherever he was at. I asked him, and he said, yes, Jimmy, I'm considering running for this seat, District 3, and not the seat that I live in, which is in Marion County, is where his home is. So I told him the same thing. I said, well, Congressman, I look forward to seeing you on the campaign trail. I am going to continue to run. I am not getting out. This conversation. It was like the last week of January, somewhere along there. Well, then the fun began, because all of a sudden, my campaign finance treasurer, my friend, my employee, I could no longer get in contact with. Now, he wasn't in Tallahassee. He was busy, and I know he had a lot of irons in the fire, but for about 2.5 weeks, I texted him, called him, left messages. Jim Moore never called me back. On February the 16th, I texted him and said this. I said, Jim, why do I get the feeling that you're avoiding me? It's all in a text message. Call me as my friend, call me as my campaign finance chairman, or call me as my employee, but I do want to call. And he did text me back and said he's busy and so on and so on. It was the weekend of his anniversary. And I immediately texted him back, said, apologize, call me when you can, I know you're busy. Friday the 17th, he called me. And this is where it started. He began the conversation like this. Jimmy, it's going to be hard to raise money. All the big people are going to endorse Cliff Stearns. And he threw out some names of some of those individuals. I said, well, it doesn't matter. I said, I'm going to have endorsements from other clerks of courts in other counties. I'm going to have endorsements from other tax collectors and constitutional officers. I'm going to have endorsements from other sheriffs in those counties. I am going to run. I'm not getting out. He said, well, you need to hear the whole story. And I said, what is that? He said, the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, is coming to Clay County for a fundraiser on March the 2nd. Now, this was before anybody knew this. I had not heard this. There were two people sitting in my office. I was engaged in a meeting with them when I received that call. So contrary to what Cliff Stearns' spokesman said, that was not an illegal recording or anything. That phone call came in from Jim Horn on my private cell number in front of 2 witnesses. And I repeated a lot of the conversation. I said, John Boehner, what's he coming to see me for? He said, well, he wants to have a private meeting with you, and he wants to make you an offer. And I said, what do you mean? He said, he wants to make you an offer to get out of the race and support Cliff Stearns. I said, what kind of offer? He said, anything you want, his exact words. I said, well, Jim, there's really nothing I want. I'm thinking back and having deja vu, because this is kind of what happened, 22 years earlier. And I said, there's nothing I want. I'm not looking for a job. I don't believe that running for public office is a job. I think it's a calling. So I'm going to continue to run. He said, well, keep an open mind. We ended the conversation. Pleasant conversation ended the 17th. That was on a Friday. On Tuesday, I received a call from Congressman Pete Sessions. 202 number, which is a Washington number. Congressman Sessions, if you well know, is a congressman from Texas. He's chairman of the Republican National Congressional Committee. Very pleasant man, very positive, didn't make any offers. He just wanted to tell me that he and the Speaker and the Republican National Congressional Committee were supporting Cliff Stearns, and he just wanted me to know that up front. The Congressional Committee is kind of the money committee. They choose who to support from the Republican standpoint. So I said to him, I said, well, Congressman, I appreciate the call, but I'm not dropping out, still going to run. He said, okay, and I said, I look forward to working with you in January. Hung the phone up. Again, nothing he did wrong, nothing he said wrong, but I did get the subliminal hint of being a former police officer. That was on Tuesday. On Thursday, I was at a fundraiser in Orange Park at Judd Sapp's house, and toward the end of that fundraiser, Judd Sapp came over to me and said, Jimmy, have they told you what is being offered by Cliff? And I said, no. I said, Jim Horn didn't mention that something is going to be offered, but I don't know what that is. He said, do you want to hear it? And I said, sure. So we stepped outside on the deck, and he said, well, here's what they're going to offer. He says, if you'll get out and you'll support if you'll support Cliff Stearns, if you'll endorse Cliff Stearns and work in his campaign, here's what they're going to offer. And they're going to offer this when John Boehner gets here. We'd like to have a meeting at my house at 3:30 p.m. the following Friday, March the 2nd. So he says, they're going to offer you a position with the U.S. Marshal Service as the U.S. Marshal for the Southern District. Now, that office is a very nice offer, a substantial offer. I said, well, I'm not interested in moving to Tampa. He said, well, if you don't like that, we can get you the appointment as the head of the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. The director is supposed to retire within the next year, and we can get you that. I said, well, those are two very nice offers, but not really interested. He said, well, think it over, and we'll talk about it and just consider it. That was the end of the conversation. That was on a Thursday night. Friday night, you'll see in here, my campaign consultant received a call from Jennifer Carroll. You'll see what was said in there. The next Tuesday, at about 7:30, I have all the times down, I received another call from Judd Sapp. Now here's where they crossed the line. He says, Jimmy, here's the final offer. He said, this is what's going to be, Cliff is going to offer you. He says, number one, he says, he'll make whole all of your campaign contributions that you've spent. All the monies you've spent in the campaign thus far, he will make whole. And that's about $25,000 to $30,000. I said, well, it's kind of interesting. I haven't heard that before. I said, how's he going to do that? So what is he either going to hire you as a political consultant for Clay County, or he's going to get direct donations for you. I said, okay. Secondly, we're going to get you tickets to the Republican National Conference, what is it, coming up in August? Convention. Republican National Convention, tickets on the floor with VIP status. Now, I've been told all kinds of different prices those are worth, anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000. I don't know what they're worth. But he said, we want to keep your name elevated. That will give you some prestige there, so that when you get ready to run for Congress in 4 to 6 years, when Cliff gets out, then you'll be in a position to do so. So I said, okay, that's interesting. So those are the two things immediately. He says, now, U.S. Marshal, he went over that again. FDLE, he went over that again. That's number 3 and 4. He said, if those don't work out because a Republican president is not elected, you can't get the U.S. Marshal's position without a Republican president, and the FDLE doesn't work out because the guy doesn't retire, then here's offer number 5. Number 5 is this. We'll give you any position in the Republican Party of Florida that you want. Any position. Number 6, if you don't want that, we've got a lobbying firm who will hire you in Tallahassee. Now all of these jobs, these last 4, was going to take effect after I left office in December. So those were the 6 offers. Well, as an elected official, as a constitutional officer, I take an oath of office that I must, under Florida law, report something that I believe to be criminal misconduct. I immediately called my brother, who, by the way, was a lieutenant with the sheriff's office, who 22 years earlier, I did the same thing and called him, because he was a police officer then, and he guided me, and he said, I went over it with him, he said, you've got to report this. He said, I believe they crossed the line. I believe they committed a criminal act. So at 8:30 the next morning, we met with the Clay County Sheriff. And in the meantime, I documented everything on this paper that I would give you, all calls, all times, all dates. Went back on my cell phone, pulled up the times, the telephone numbers that they had called, and documented all of it, exactly what they said. The next morning, we met with the sheriff and the chief state attorney for Clay County, a gentleman by the name of Nelson. Gave them that, and here's what I said. Not only did I say this to them, I said this to the FBI. I said, I'm here not to file a complaint. I'm here because I want to protect Jimmy Jett. I want to make sure I have not broken the law. Because according to what I believe, if this is criminal misconduct, I must report it. And if you tell me right now, Sheriff and Mr. State Attorney, that it's not criminal misconduct, I go home, nobody knows about it, everything's okay, we go on with the campaign. The sheriff says, well, we need to run this up. It looks like it could be. So they called Angela Corey. Went over it with her over the phone. She said, well, we need to have the U.S. Attorney look at this. Get this document to me as soon as possible. So my brother and I left the office. Later on that afternoon, that evening, I got a call from the FBI. The U.S. Attorney had reviewed it, handed it over to the FBI. The FBI had reviewed it, called me and said, I want to meet with you at 10 o'clock at the Jacksonville office of the FBI tomorrow. I said, I'll be there. Now that was I met with the FBI on February the 29th, a Wednesday. No, I met with the FBI on March the 1st, a Thursday. Now this is about 30 hours before the drop-dead deadline of the meeting with Cliff Stearns, Speaker Boehner, that was going to be held at Judge Sapp's house on Friday, March the 2nd at 3:30. So we met. They come in, started a conversation, and look, the only reason I can say this is the FBI has given me permission to talk about this. This is an ongoing investigation, but they did give me specific permission to talk about all of this, any part of this. So, and that's why I brought it out public. So we sat down, FBI, two agents come in, sat down with us and said, FBI doesn't like to get involved in political issues, and that's how the conversation started. I said, wait a minute, we're not here to file a complaint. I said, repeated the same thing. By law, I have to report it. By law, as a deputy sheriff, my brother has to report it since he's made knowledge of it. Tell us that there's nothing wrong. We all leave. Don't spend any taxpayers' monies, and we're gone. And they said, no. We think there's a criminal act. We want to talk to you about it. So that's how the conversation went. After he talked about all the parties, everything that happened, I'd given them, they had this document in their hand. He said to me, are you willing to, under oath, swear to this under threat of perjury that this is factual, all of it? And I said, yes, I am. They said, sign it. I signed it for the FBI. Now, if you're aware, and I know there's some former police officers here, retired police officers, in a federal investigation, if you lie to a federal agency, it is a criminal act. Locally, I guess you can lie, you don't get charged, but in federal, you do get charged. So, that's the reason I am absolutely confirming to you everything in this 6-page document is absolutely true. Now, they said, toward the end of the conversation, Mr. Jett, would you be willing to wear a body bug? Would you be willing to have us tap your telephone and make calls to these parties to confirm what you put in this document? And I say to this, only if it's worth it. I don't want to do this unless you're willing to pursue it because of the politics involved. I said, I don't want to call Cliff Stearns up or Cliff Stearns supporters and say to them, Jimmy Jett's willing to drop out of the race, Jimmy Jett is willing to support Cliff Stearns, and Jimmy Jett's willing to work in his campaign, unless you're sure that something's going to be done. They said, we believe it will. We're going to run it up the flagpole, we'll call you. This is March 2nd, March 1st, on Thursday. At about 6 o'clock that afternoon, they called and said, we're having trouble getting approval. It had to go up on the prosecutorial side with the Department of Justice for approval. It had to go up on the FBI side for the investigative agency for approval. And he said, I'd like to come to your house in case we can get approval. We can make the calls tonight. So they just came out, sat on my back porch, we sat there, and they received a phone call And he said, yeah, okay, I understand. Okay. I said, all right, we can make the phone calls and we can audio tape anybody except Speaker Boehner. Cannot audio tape Speaker Boehner. So I said, well, how can that be? They said, that is what it is. Yes, okay. All right, very quickly, I'm going to end up. We made the phone calls to Judge Sapp, audio taped it for the FBI. I wasn't audio taping it, the FBI was audio taping it. He confirmed everything in this document, all 6 offers. Called Jim Horn. Judge Sapp said, I'm elated. Cliff Stearns has got this election in the bag. Nobody can beat him now. So on and so on and so on. All that's on tape. Called Jim Horn. Same thing. He's elated. Went over all 6 things with me. One question I did ask Jim that I didn't ask others. Said, how can Cliff Stearns deliver the director of the FDLE? That's a gubernatorial appointment. The statement was this: I am close friends with the governor. I can deliver that for you. He crossed the line. So, hung up. The FBI jumps up, says, I got to transcribe this, send it to Washington. To make a long story short, the next day when we were supposed to go in with the body bugs, they could not get approval because Speaker Boehner was going to come to the party. I received 2 more calls, not illegally taped, 2 calls that the FBI told me if they called any of the parties, allow it to go to voicemail. I did. I have 2 phone calls, legally recorded calls on my voicemail confirming this. So I have those. If anybody wants to listen to them afterwards, I'll play them for you. Confirming that Cliff Stearns was in agreement, that Cliff Stearns was on board, and that because the last thing Judge Sapp said is I'm going to call Cliff, I'm going to make sure he's on board, make sure he hasn't backed up on this agreement, and so on. So, make a long story short, they wouldn't allow us to do it. I went over there, told them, says, look, we're all under investigation with the FBI. You are Cliff, you're the focus of the investigation. Jim, they're looking at you. Judge, they're looking at you. There's no deals made. I'm not making any deals with you. Don't call me again. Don't make any more offers. I'm running for Congress. So folks, that's what I plan to do. I'm staying in this race because this is what's wrong with America. We do not need people in Washington that will do anything or pay any price to maintain their position in Congress. We need people who are willing to stand up for against the Democrats and say to the Democrats and their ideology, enough is enough. And that's why I'm running for Congress.